Do what you do and learn how to do it better than anybody else. I don't care what it is. And what you're not good at, hire somebody who made it their life to be the best at. If you're the best landscape gardener out there, be the best one you can be, then hire people around you to make you whole in the areas that you're not good in. Whether it's, your CPAs, your attorneys, whoever they are, make sure that you have somebody that has your back in those areas.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us today on the Green Pro to CEO podcast. I'm super excited about the guest we have today. I have my business partner, Bubba Wallace Ellison. That's not actually his name. And then I have a longtime friend, high school. Well, not necessarily high school. We went to all school together. Yeah. Richard Ferguson is wearing the Sweetwater Mustang retro hat. We grew up in Sweetwater, Texas. Again, home of the world's largest rattlesnake roundup. That's our claim to fame. And we won a state championship in 1985. So that's right. Pretty big deal. Rich, we're going to talk a little bit about everything insurance today, but a little bit about you. You've been in the insurance industry for a long time. We're going to let you kind of get into the details of that, but you're also an avid real estate investor. Most importantly, you're a father, you're a husband, and you're a travel softball coach. So tell the world a little bit about Rich and who you are.
Yeah, so I graduated from Angelo State University in 2007 and went straight into insurance. I was doing door-to-door sales, so I know some of y'all can relate to that with how you're acquiring business. I worked for a company that they gave us a T system, basically. They'd give you one household, and you were supposed to work with the neighbor on the left, neighbor on the right, neighbor across the street. And they were big on name dropping, hey, Matt told me to come by here. I'd handle his life insurance. I thought you might be a good candidate too. And, we used to go knock a lot of doors. Cut my teeth doing that. That was difficult. Had the opportunity to move home to a captive insurance agency. A gentleman who has passed away since, but I look up to a lot and still was one of my best mentors. Gave me the opportunity to take the agency when he retired. And so I've been doing that for a little over 12 years now. Started real estate investing in 2012. Didn't have my own house at the time. Was living in one of my parents' houses that they owned.
That's a Grant Cardone way, isn't it?
It is. No, it is. We had not bought our own house when we bought our first rent house. I think by the time we bought our third, we had finally bought a house, but it was still a rehab deal. We got a great deal on it because it was a rehab deal, and that kind of led us, into that world of real estate investing. I'm, like I said, a softball coach. I've got 4 kiddos, 3 girls and 1 boy. We play a lot of ball. Can't wait for all of them to go through it. They all love to play right now, baseball and softball. And I think those are the big things. Got a wonderful wife, been married to for about 15 years now. We met in college.
Caitlin's also in the insurance industry.
She is.
She has her own
agency, totally separate, same captive company. She's in a town in Snyder. So for those of you there in West Texas, we're about 35 miles apart. And she does her own thing, does it differently than I do, which is awesome. How you can have success doing things differently, but the same. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a salesperson, so I'll just go out and sell. She's a manager. She manages people way better than I do, probably.
Sure. She's also involved heavily in the real estate game with you guys, with your partnerships. You guys, just clarify a little bit. Most of it is single family rental. Yep. Is that right?
Yeah.
Y'all played some in the short-term rental deal?
Yeah, we've gotten into the short-term rental as of late, but yeah, we started with just, one rent house was kind of always the plan. We started with it, let the cash stack. So one thing my partner and I said from the beginning is this was our long-term wealth generation thing, which is good because I didn't have any money at the time.
Sure.
I think we both put in, $8,000 or so, which was all the money I had in the world at the time. Right after I started my insurance agency, this was within 6 months, had my first baby, started the first business, then went into, bought a first rent house. And we both put in like $8,000. It took us another maybe year to buy the second one because we had to rebuild that cash back up and using rent, that kind of deal. And then we bought the third one about a year after that. Then it started to multiply, kind of went, you try to scale it, but it's hard when you don't have any money.
Sure.
So that first house, I'll never forget. We went in between us now, there's 8 kids between the 2 families. But at the time, I guess we had 3. My oldest was a baby, and we're over there trying to paint and demo bathrooms and do everything ourselves. And I bet we spent more on pizza than we saved by not hiring a painter. You know what I mean?
The lessons you learn.
And
right?
we use twice as much paint. Once you realize how efficient a painter is versus what you do, and they have all the equipment, they have the right stuff, the drop cloths. By the time you go buy that stuff, you're not saving any money. Sure. And it's not done as well. So that first house we learned a lot on. Second house, we brought in professionals on everything, and really haven't looked back on that. As far as using professionals on everything, we general contract it, but we, have our subs that we use and have, I don't know, we've flipped a bunch of houses through the years, but most of the time, long-term wealth generation, we keep them as rentals. I mean, that's kind of the mindset of if we sell one and we do an exchange, which is nice when you have a CPA business partner who understands this better than you do all the time, but sure. We'll do an exchange. And so the goal is playing Monopoly. If you sell one, you want to generate enough cash to go buy 4. You don't ever want to go 1 for 1 unless it's something different. So what we did so you mentioned the short-term rental. We only have one. We got it, and it's in Tennessee. It's a cabin. We looked at buying. We were going to sell a house. It was the first house we bought, funny enough. I had somebody reach out to me and say, hey, I'd like to buy it. I mean, it was vacant for the first time in 10 years. And I was like, well, that's weird. Like, why do you want that house? She's like, well, my brother lives across the street. So she wanted it. She had cash. So we got it sold, didn't owe much on it, didn't exchange. But we had enough cash from that deal that we could have bought probably 7 or 8 houses in the Sweetwater market. We looked. We called investors, called our bankers, called our attorneys, CPAs, and said, hey, do you have any customers looking to get out of the real estate game, or wanting to sell their portfolio or, that kind of deal. We looked at 10 or 12 in Abilene from a guy that had them and felt like he wanted too much. We looked at some in Sweetwater that might have made sense, but they were still a little high. Well, we decided let's look at short-term rentals. And the problem with an exchange, not to get too much into it, is you got like a short window to establish them. You've got 45 days to say we're going to look at these 3 properties, and you've got 90 days to close one of them, or 180. And so you don't have you've got to decide what you're going to do pretty quickly as far as I'm going to buy this property. So we established our properties, got an idea, found one in Tennessee we liked because the numbers worked really, really well. So instead of buying, $500,000 to $700,000 worth of houses in Sweetwater, we bought one $500,000 cabin in Tennessee, which is kind of crazy because the numbers are almost exactly the same. Your total rents coming in from a daily rental on a property like that are almost the same as 5 to 7 rentals in our market. Well, which one's going to have less management for us personally? The one we're paying a management company 20 hours away to run. So I was like, makes total sense to do that because we won't touch it. Those 7 or 8 in Sweetwater, even with a management company, we're going to have to deal with some.
So
right?
We learned that lesson, didn't we, Bubba? Yeah. You guys helped us get started in our journey. Now we have some properties. We thought, hey, this whole short-term rental, this whole Airbnb, Verbo thing, that's the way to do it. Boy, did we learn. If you don't have an adequate property management company to run those things, there is nothing passive about short-term rentals.
But there's nothing passive about real estate, and that's what I would warn people about who think they want passive, like mailbox money. The only true mailbox money in the world is royalties. Whether you inherited or wrote a song or oil, gas, whatever it is, that's really the only mailbox money there is.
Or you were in a calendar like Bubba. And
yeah. Did you go by my concho? Is that what's the...
Sell my feet pics.
But there's nothing passive about it. We've hired a management company. We're still pretty actively involved. We talk to our manager every day about something. It's way less involved, but we still have the final say on tenants and everything else. But so I think there's a ton of value to the short-term market. Don't get me wrong. But the goal always, it seems like when you talk to people who are getting into real estate is, well, I want to own apartments. I want to get as many doors as I can. And there's nothing wrong with that. I used to think that. I used to think we're playing single A ball. I want to get up to double A to triple A to the big leagues. I want to own, apartments. There's a good niche market with single family rentals that some people I think overlook because they want to be bigger. Matt and I, we've talked a lot about being small giants.
Yep.
Well, to me, the single family market's better because you get better tenants. There's less turnover than an apartment. So you're not paying make readies all the time. You're not doing, there's a cost associated with bigger properties, right? We found that duplexes, quadplexes, and single family, not a bad place to be. Now, my wife and I, Caitlin and I on our own, have bought some commercial properties that have more like 3 to 5 year commercial tenants, barbershops, nail places, finance places.
Still have the vape shop guy?
We do.
Yep.
It's really, they sell
Bongs.
They sell water bongs, like big, fancy. But your average, how do I say this eloquently? Your average pothead's not buying these
Right.
because they're $400 or $500 bongs.
I love it.
And so it's a high end shop that, man, if they can scale, and I've talked to them about it some because they have a great product, they have a great logo, like it's franchisable,
huge.
but it could be franchised, and it's a classy name that takes a spin on 420. We won't get into that, but it's like, but yeah, no, they rent from us. We've got a company that does hearing aids, so we've gotten some of the commercial. It comes with a different set of risk, and once you have turnover in commercial, you might go a year without a tenant, so you have to be prepared for that. And you might have to do a build out. You might have to do different things that you don't see on like the residential side as much.
I got you.
So you have to be prepared that, yes, this tenant may be here 5 years on a lease, but after that, I could wait 2 years before I get another tenant in here. Depends on the market, obviously, but we're prepared for that.
Sure.
But so we've done a little bit of that. To me, it's all about income streams. And we've talked a lot about that. But going from, I will say, so talking about what we're going to talk about on the podcast today, obviously, like the mentality of we'll manage everything ourselves to hiring a property manager in the past 2 years has been a tremendous thing to me. I didn't realize how much it was weighing me down leasing all our properties because I'm the sales guy. We have a beautiful business partnership. Steven's my CPA. He does all the financials. Mom's a realtor, so we have access to everything. The girls are great at design. They're good at picking out paint colors and and doing flooring and all of that. And I lease, I sell, I get stuff sold before we finish it, for flipping. But I didn't realize how much leasing these properties was weighing me down. Just the time commitment and showing 30 people something for one of them to work out. So hiring a property manager, huge as far as trying to go to that next level. Because then once she started doing it, I was like, oh, wow, I like this again. We went a year and a half, 2 years without buying much. And I thought it was the market, but it was me. Because I wasn't out bird dogging, I went out looking because I was so tired of doing it. And once we hired her, we've bought 5 properties this year.
I love it. So yeah, that leads us right into what we want to talk about today. Bubba and I decided, hey, we're going to put this podcast together, put our marketing brains and our marketing hats on, and said, hey, what's this thing mean? Why are we doing it? What do we call it? And it's really about our journey. We're in the green industry. You can check out my Instagram. There's a tagline there that says, "Don't call me a landscaper." I hate that. I hated it because it was a derogatory term. It meant the society didn't value our skill set, and they also didn't pay us our worth. And so our job, we feel like we have found some things that have worked, and we've been able to scale our businesses and transition from being the technician to running the business. And now the real magic's happening. Like, we are in a season of winning because we have figured out how to get out of the truck. And a whole bunch of that has been learning to delegate, learning to bring in help, stop driving the skid steers on our own. We all go through this journey at different rates. I felt like I probably came out of it a little bit sooner than you had. Now, the funny thing about that is it took me this long. And because we met up, it took him this long. And so that's what we're trying to do for our audience here. We want to help you guys that are 2 guys in a truck. The owner is in the truck, 2 or 3 guys in the back helping them, doing the work every day, taking the cell phone calls, writing your own estimates, doing your own appointments. We want to give you free game from our journey and bring people like yourself, Richard, in that have helped us along that. You might want to speak to that, Bubba, a little bit about, we talked on another episode about that the power of delegation, but part of that, especially with contractors in a male-dominated industry, part of what holds us back sometimes is our own ego, right? You can sell better than anybody. You can build better than anybody. I could do it myself. I don't have the patience to watch him go through this journey of learning the skill set. So I'll just do it. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, a glaring point that jumped out to me while he was, talking and explaining all this, and some of the stuff we've gone through and had to learn is you got to have a network, right? And you have to realize you can't do it all on your own, right? So you build that network of people that that you can rely on for whether it's advice or helping you do something. But like we always try to do everything ourselves, right? We try to the rental game, we're going to buy this house, we're going to Airbnb it, we're going to do this. No, we're not.
That blew up in our face.
Yeah, like you did. It's 2 hours away. It needed a little work. But hey, we were going to do all this stuff. Like we got the crews to do it, but that was out of our wheelhouse, right? So it wasn't in the landscaping, part or the outdoor.
It was
area,
a
right.
different game.
Yeah.
We could have fixed that outside in 2 days.
Well,
but getting the business going, that was hard.
But I'll say, so on our short-term rental in Tennessee, we had the wrong management company to begin with. And we bought an existing short-term rental. So it was set up ready to go. There were some deferred maintenance issues, but for the most part, the absentee owner there wasn't doing stuff. So we ran into that, though. We got the wrong management company, and they're a big national one. They tried to screw us as much as they could. They took when we gave them we had to give them 90-day notice to pull out from them. They pulled our listing down, but we were still under contract with them for 90 days. They weren't gonna lease it anymore. Guess what? You can't win that because they have big national attorneys that are gonna fight you. Like you can try, but you're gonna lose more money than it's worth.
Yeah.
They let us out of it, but it was a pain. Found a much smaller regional company that we can deal with personally and know who we're talking to all the time, and it's so much different.
So that is a superpower you have. Everybody loves Bubba.
Everybody loves Bubba.
Everybody.
I don't know about all that, but
we should have some T-shirts made. Surely somebody in our network.
I would buy one.
Yeah, I think so.
I'd wear it. No, I mean,
I'd wear it, and I would wear a medium so that like they got the full effect of his head and everything.
So that's
super
the royalties we talk about. That's that mailbox money for me.
So as somebody who has to talk to mutual customers, from y'all and us, and like I talk to y'all's bankers. Sure. I talk to some of y'all's guys, but like. The bankers, they all, we love Bubba. Oh, it's for Bubba. I mean, they really do. There's something there. And talking about that network, that's a big deal.
I'm always the villain. It's because Rita says I look like Pablo Escobar. Like, what does that mean?
I always think you look like Machete.
Oh, yeah. I appreciate that. But, man, talk about that because that is a superpower. Our business has grown because we just have to make a phone call. And we can fix just about anything.
Yeah, I don't know. I just always, try to do what you say you're going to do and when you're going to do it and treat people right, and help them when you can. It just builds, it builds relationships with people and it's really, it's priceless, really, because we need something somewhere. I'm like, oh, I know a guy,
But you're also that guy for people.
Yeah.
And that's what I've always tried to be. In everything that we do, I want somebody to be like, I've got that guy, and it's Richard. Whether it's insurance or real estate or just a friend, like that guy.
So Tuesday, I turned 41 years old. And it wasn't until, I've always been a good guy. We talked about this yesterday. It's very unique in our partnership that all three partners, myself, Bubba, and Rita, we are givers, selfless givers. We love people. We care about people. And although that is who I am at my core, I don't know that I've always been as intentional as I have recently decided I am going to be. I am going to be that guy. I'm going to love you. I'm going to make sure you know it. I'm going to help you. I think subconsciously, because I was a sales guy, there was, and I think we all have to admit this at some point, there was something back here that I always kind of wanted to know what's in it for me.
Yeah.
Right? And that's fair. And I have decided that, hey, if I'm walking in faith and I truly believe that, God's guiding my path, then I can give selflessly and I'm always going to be provided for. And that's a maturity thing on my end, just in my own personal faith. But, man, this dude's done it well for a long time. And I think that's why we win.
Yeah, I never want to give anything and have a string attached to it, right? You never want to have that. We've bought numerous cars for employees. We've bought houses. We've done all these things, right? But there's no strings attached because, I mean, I've done it. I've handed them the title, and they didn't know anything about it. Hand them the title, and I say, if you quit me today, nothing changes here. This is yours, right? This is, for whatever you want to do with it. And if you want to sell it tomorrow, this thing is yours. I want you to understand that. And I had to get to that point. I had to get to that point where when you're doing these things, yes, it's your money you're spending, that you've worked hard for and you saved for. But if you're going to be willing to do that, spend that money for those people, and whatever it is, then you have to. There can't be any strings attached to it. You can't have any resentment that's going to come back. That dang, I just gave him that. And he turned around and sold it, or he quit me a week later.
This is a talk we had yesterday.
Yeah,
I told you that I have struggled, but we have a great relationship. All three of us do. So it's easy for us to call each other out on our BS. And I am actually the guy that likes to call people out. I like that. I enjoy it. Like, hey, man, you're stepping out of line. But I haven't always received it as well. And we had this talk yesterday. He called me out on something. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. I need to talk to you about that. The reason I do that, and he already knew why I responded how I responded. I'm like, that guy ticked me off. And I can't let it go. So I shoot little jabs at him, or I don't love him as much as I love the other guys. And he's like, yeah, man, like we got to grow through that. And he's right. And so all this stuff is kind of compounding. But that's what the spirit of this podcast is. Rich, you're here today. You've got all these years of industry experience in the insurance world. You've also been on the other side, not just through relationships with contractors, although you've had lots and lots of contractor clients and still do, but you've served as a contractor, so you understand that. What we want to give these guys today, the guys driving around in the truck right now, listening, going, my world is falling apart. I don't know who to talk to about these things. Your expertise is insurance. Let's talk about a few things that they're getting started. They should absolutely do to protect themselves and their families and their businesses from this day forward. What are a couple things we should, whatever you want to talk about? First,
so I think it's super important to have a guy. We talk about that, but have somebody you can talk to personally on the phone, whatever it is, text them. But that's in your corner. It's not an 800 number. It's not, and sometimes you can get stuff cheaper. Don't get me wrong. And I get that dollars and cents really count when you're starting a business and running. But what people tend to think about with insurance is I've got to insure my car because the bank said I had to. I've got to insure this equipment because the bank said I have to. I've got to insure this because I have a loan on it. I mean, that's kind of the big deal. But to me, yes, that's important. You have to do that. It is what it is. The bank says you got to keep insurance on a piece of equipment you've got a loan against. Good. That's fine. Everybody usually does that, right?
Sure.
What they space on or what they avoid or just don't want to deal with is the liability side. And so one thing that I've always done, whether it's commercial customers or personal lines, is talk liability first. The reason being is we all probably know people, or we're in positions where if our house is burned down tomorrow, we could scrounge up the money to rebuild them, right? And I have a lot of customers that they could rebuild a $500,000 house. Would they want to? Probably not, but they're going to insure it because they don't want to. You get a lawsuit judgment against you for $3 million. Can you afford that? Or $2 million, or even $1 million? Because you were negligent in some situation, whether it was a car wreck, somebody slipped and fell at the house, you got into a fight with somebody, and punched them and they fell and hit their head. It sounds crazy, but those are real world liability situations.
I feel like that was pointed at me.
Yeah, I've known you a long time. But for the two guys in the truck, sometimes we worry about insuring the truck and the equipment, but we slack off on the other things. Liability will bankrupt you quicker than anything else.
The minimum.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
because that, to me, that when people say I have liability insurance, what they're saying is I have the minimum by law.
So think about this, and so let's educate that a little bit. The minimum for personal lines, or even some contracts on the commercial side will stipulate it, but there's a lot of guys out there riding around with what you call 30, 60, 25. It hadn't changed in 10 years. That's the state required liability limits in Texas. So you just see those numbers. They'll say 30/60/25. $30,000. It's $30,000 for bodily injury, $60,000 in the aggregate. So per wreck, $25,000 in property damage. Who in here has a vehicle worth more than $25,000 right now?
Every one of us.
Yep.
I don't think you can buy a used vehicle.
I mean, I don't think a Ford
20.
Focus or like one of the cheaper vehicles you could buy, like a Honda Accord, maybe they're all over 25.
Absolutely.
Maybe in that 20 to 25 range. But regardless, like, so if you have somebody who's carrying state minimum liability limits, or if you are, and you get into a wreck, the most your insurance company is going to pay is $25,000 in property damage. Where does the rest of that money come from?
I don't know. Maybe they seize your assets, sell them at the courthouse.
Yeah. So
steps.
In a personal line situation, so like, you're in your personal vehicle, something happens. Most of the time what's going to happen is if you only pay $25,000 on somebody's new Escalade that was $150, let's say there's a $125,000 difference. Their company may pay the difference based on their policy because they could file it on theirs through either uninsured motorist or collision, which usually is what happens. So that person doesn't directly sue you. Their insurance company sues you through a process called subrogation. And so they come through and they sue you, and guess what? They have attorneys. They're not going to let up because they want their money back because their customer wasn't at fault, right? But they had to pay out a big claim. Well, that's where you're fairly protected in Texas anyways. Like, we can't take future wages. Other states that can. They can take future income. Here they can't.
They can garnish your
They
wages.
can garnish in other states. Here's a little bit different.
Sure.
They can't take your homestead. They can't take your house if it's homesteaded. They can't take so many cars. If it's protected in bankruptcy, for the most part, it's protected in a lawsuit. But they can put a lien on you. So when you go to sell it, same thing. They can't take your retirement account, but if you ever take money out, when you take the money out, if they have a lien on you, they could freeze your accounts and pull it out. So it's an issue, right? All it takes is liability insurance is probably the least expensive out of everything you could look at. If they'd have just been carrying $250,000, $500,000, $250,000, and that's what I recommend minimally to people, they'd have been fine. It made it cost them $20 more a month. Now on the commercial side, so the guys, we're talking about their truck. The other thing is, I'd tell you, make sure if you've got a company, you're the two guys in the truck, that you've got it on a commercial policy. That you're not riding around with your private passenger policy. Even if you're doing it as a DBA, like, put it on the right policy and do $1 million combined single limits.
It's not as expensive. So this is something I learned.
It can actually be cheaper than private passenger because you're using it just for business, right? Yep. You're probably not driving it around 24/7. It's 8 hours a day to job sites. But you've got to worry about your liability. Because that's what happens when somebody turns around, and especially if you have these guys, they've got a nice little wrap on their truck. You run into somebody, they're going to sue you because all of a sudden they think you have money because you've got a business. People are litigious anyways, but you get these attorneys that are ambulance chasers, and insurance companies are going to settle with them because most insurance companies are going to have to pay unlimited defense costs in those situations. So even out of that dollar amount that we're talking about, let's say it's $250,000. They still have to pay all the defense costs that aren't included in that. That's just the amount they will use to pay injuries or property damage. If they think that it's going to cost more to go to trial over it than it would to settle, they'll settle, right? So you've got to just have the right limits. Now, a lot of times for your commercial guys, if they're not once you get to a point where, like, I saw you transition from doing more residential stuff in the past to, commercial business, real commercial business, municipalities and school districts and those kind of things. And there's obviously advantages to that. Their checks usually don't bounce. They do bigger projects. There's some huge advantages to that. They're fewer and far between. But I remember, so when you're doing the residential side, those guys, there may not be requiring you. If somebody's coming to do landscaping at my house, not a big install, but saying we're mowing and, doing flower bed cleanup, they're probably not carrying the right amount of coverage because I'm not going to check it. I'm not going to be like, you have a contract with me. I need, $1 million here, $1 million there. You have to have workers' comp. Because guess what? Those guys wouldn't come work for me. Right?
Happens all the time.
We had one customer, we just, was planting a bunch of trees, and the guys brought the wrong attachment for our bid. And instead of running back and getting that, he was like, got a backhoe here, but I need to have your insurance. And this was a residential property. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. And I had to, tell him, I promise we won't sue if, something happens. But like, he's like, what kind of insurance you got? We have to let him know, and that's never happened to me on a residential property.
But
you mentioned backhoe. So the guy obviously either had some cash or had a business or had
lots of cash.
Or he's a farmer.
Business.
So,
he was
a wealthy individual.
He knows the importance.
Absolutely.
He immediately brought it up. And, Bubba and I talked about it. We have a quasi internal policy that says, because we get it all the time. People are like, we're in West Texas. People have equipment. Every guy around has a skid steer. So people always hit us with, well, I have a skid steer. If you'll take some money off, you can use my equipment. It's not a written policy. We probably should make it one. Yeah. But we don't use other people's equipment. Right?
I wouldn't.
Because the liability. My guy gets on your skid steer, doesn't know how to drive it, drives it through your house, runs over Fluffy, your Chihuahua that's now worth $3 million. We have a mess. We believe insurance is the cheapest, safe thing. It allows me to sleep at night, I guess, is the deal. I would rather spend my money being adequately insured, not just for my peace of mind, but knowing that every man that goes out there and slaves 10, 12, 14 hours a day for us is protected and his family's protected. I would rather have that than air conditioning. Right?
And you also, your subs that you're bringing onto the job, they got to have insurance too.
And the best subs do.
So let's talk about that for a second, because
subcontractors.
One thing that I talked to Rita about, it's been several years ago, we had to have a conversation about, was for workers' comp specifically, is do your subcontractors have workers' comp? Because if not, they're not subcontractors. As far as workers' comp is concerned, they're considering that payroll. How many are you subbing out because they're covered on yours if they don't carry their own?
Ooh, that's free game right there.
I know, right? You got to think about that. Yeah.
No, it's a big deal though. And they look at how much subcontracted work do you have. We have to turn in those numbers. Yeah. Doesn't matter what company you're appointed with.
So that's the reason why you're getting audited. And sometimes at the end of the year, she says, hey, we owe more. Or, hey, they're giving us a credit or whatever.
Let's talk about that. Contractors' policies in general, regardless of what company you're with, are generally what you consider auditable policies. And I really try to explain that to people up front, because what happens is, on contractors, they base your liability rating off your payroll.
Does that include us? So we're two guys in a truck, so we have three people. The owner is one, and your payroll is $150,000 a year, okay? The business owner is paying himself $50,000. He's paying the two guys that are employees $50,000 each. Are we included in how you do all this?
Yes and no. So you can, on workers' comp, you can exclude owners.
Okay.
Which we generally do for people who aren't in the field. You know what I mean? Because it's so much cheaper to not have you on there. And most people are good with that.
But if they are a technician,
they're
working every single day,
you probably need to be on there.
You probably need to be on there. Okay.
If the business wouldn't run without you, you have a job, not a business, but that's another story. You know what I mean? We've had that conversation, but I would definitely have you on there. But contractors' policies in general, and this is pretty industry specific, there's different state numbers. I want to say in Texas, you have to, for each owner, you put down $35,400 as their salary. It's a weird number, but it's state, that's the normal.
I feel like that's what Rita paid me for 5 years.
Yeah, it's probably what she did pay you. But no, so you you include you in that for the payroll, but it's only, you don't put your real number in there. It's $35,400, which sounds like a weird number, but it's what the state says to do. And so that's what you go off of for owners. And so, but you're going off of payroll for contractors' policies. Well, so let's say your payroll is, you think it's going to be $250,000. It turns out to be $300,000. Well, you may owe money at the end of the year. What sucks about that is you have to pay back that year, and then they raise your premium for the next year based on $300. So we always want to be accurate. But what happens sometimes is these guys will come in and they'll just tell you they don't give you a real number because they think their insurance is going to be cheaper that way, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't work because it's audited, and it's usually audited it's audited by a third party. That's not the insurance company. It's not their person. And they usually talk to your bookkeeper if you have one. You give them permission.
They're asking for it.
No. You have to go on. and like onto a website usually, or do it on the phone with them, and you have to give them 941 numbers, like from your actual payroll tax report. So if you don't know what a 941 is, that's the actual report you file, either quarterly or monthly, depending how you're set up to pay payroll taxes.
Got you.
Some people have to pay them monthly, depending on the amounts. For our businesses, we pay quarterly. As long as you don't miss a quarterly payment, you can still pay quarterly most of the time. I think if you get behind, they start making you pay monthly. But you file these reports every quarter. That's where they get the numbers. So they're accurate. And they make you show up like the 941 report. So you have to turn in like 4 pages, like the first page of that report. There's no way to fudge that. And so I always tell people, let's overestimate if you think you're going to grow. I would rather you get premium back, because they'll refund it. Like if you told us, oh, we're at 350 and we only had 250 in payroll, they'll give you that portion back of premium at the end of that year. And so it's a big deal, though.
I learned that the hard way, where I was wanting to save money, and he gave me the advice to, hey, we should probably do this, but it's going to increase it by this much a month and all that, and I was fresh in it, and I was like, well, I just want to, keep it the same, and da-da-da. You got a big bill at the end, I think it's $19,000 or $20,000. I was like, ooh, ouch. So
it can be a big difference.
Gears, yeah. And of course, my rent went higher, like you said. I switched gears. I said, okay, let's overestimate this. My payroll, let's say it's going to grow, because we're going to grow, all this stuff. And then they wrote me a check at the end of that next year, and I'm like, okay, that's the game. Make sure you're covered. But I think the key to it is, yes, you have to turn in all these numbers to any insurance you use or agent. But having that person that, like Richard, that will explain this stuff to you, the ins and outs of it, and not just going to send you a quote and say, cross their fingers, that, hey, I'm the lowest, and you may not be the lowest, but you need to know why, right? So having somebody like Richard is that's key to that. You trust, and that will work with you and explain all this stuff to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest part of it. And sometimes it might make sense to change it up like mid-year. Like if you're in a big growth spurt and your payroll doubled, like Rita and I have had those talks, so you can update those numbers mid-year and they can adjust stuff usually. Especially with workers' comp, you can. And I think that's a big deal to do. Like if it's going to be a lot more, let's go ahead and adjust it.
I mean, we've had that happen. We went through, we're in this process of scaling, and we went through a time where payroll was under budget, in our off season, January through March. And holy cow, by July, there are guys everywhere.
I also saw y'all, though, when you first got together and started figuring out how to make this work between the two of y'all had a lot of duplication in payroll that y'all got rid of.
Yep.
I mean, call it trimming fat, call it whatever, but y'all had a lot of the same guys doing the same thing for your two separate companies that realistically you only needed one, even for a combined company.
And I think
so y'all did see a big dip in payroll for a little while there.
Huge. And it was very important that we had, and every time we bring a new guest on, it's really neat. I hope our listeners are starting to catch on to this, that at the end of the day, Bubba, we talk about this daily. It's always about communication. So you have to find partners, your banker, your CPA, your insurance guy. If all you're doing, if you're stuck in the mindset of cost is the number one thing for me, it's the value for me, and all we're going to do is hop on our website and get 50 insurance quotes, you're doing yourself a disservice. It's always about the relationship. We're talking today a little bit about workers' comp, understanding these things, because we want the guys that are starting their journey to understand those things. But you play a bigger role. I know you know this, could get insurance cheaper. Yeah. We don't, because it's more than insurance does. It's, hey, Rich, we're going to do a project that's $2 million for this school district. We've never done it before. I don't even know how to spell bonding. Can you help me? And you come back and you go, I can't help you with that. It's out of our suite of services, but here's this guy. And you're not our insurance agent. You're part of our team.
Yeah.
And we call customers together. We call vendors together. You write letters. You write emails. Like, you're always available, and that's really important. That's something we could not get if we only chose to find the cheapest rate online.
No, I mean, I think that's a big deal. I mean, same thing with what y'all do. you can always find somebody to do it cheaper.
Sure.
And I mean, I think y'all are very open and upfront about that. So if I had to narrow two things down when it comes to business partnerships, and the audience we're talking to, so if you're sitting there when you're in your truck with your guys listening to this right now, and you think you could grow your business through a partnership, the two biggest things I would tell you, because I've been in a business partnership for 12, 13 years now. Y'all started, it's been what, 4 years now?
4 years.
And you and Rita were a good partnership. I think husband and wives are partners too, like in business, like when they're in it together. What breaks them is lack of communication is the biggest thing. Like, I think people screw up so much because they're not willing to talk about things. You have to be at a point where, I joke with Steven, and he gets real embarrassed when I do it in front of a group of people. I'm like, we're like married. Like, other than having sex, like, we have a joint bank account. I talk to him as much as my wife, if not more, during the day. And like,
so y'all have a similar marriage to a lot of Americans.
Yeah, really. But like, I joke about it sometimes, but like, you have to be able to have hard conversations, be like, I don't appreciate that, or like, this didn't work for me because, without being passive aggressive, without letting things fester. Sure. And that's why business partnerships don't work. Like, we in our mastermind that we've been in before, like, you hear a lot of horror stories about partnerships that just didn't work, or somebody stole, or somebody did this, I have no clue sometimes on the financial side till he sends me reports, but I trust him as much as I trust my wife.
Yep.
And I think but having communication is the biggest part of that, especially when you have spouses involved. And it's kind of funny on our business partnership is, and I don't know if y'all are the same way yet, but like, it's never me and Caitlin against them. It's usually me and Ashley against Caitlin and Steven. Because
so the partners kind of are
completely, because those two are the tightest people you will ever meet sometimes. And I'm like, no, we need to spend the money on this. Like, that's like the coup de grace, and sometimes Steven has trouble with that. And Caitlin's the tight one too. That's like, no, I'd rather make more,
Sure.
And so we have to have those conversations. So that's actually probably a good thing though, because then it's never like Ferguson Mays against each other. We're usually pretty split on it.
Sure.
And so that's a cool dynamic, but it takes time. I mean, it's not always been that way. I mean, it takes time to be able to build that. But that's a big deal. If you're sitting in your truck right now and you're thinking, oh, I need to go in partnership with somebody, like, you better be able to communicate.
I think the message I am trying to convey is all of these people you do business with, you should do life with.
Oh, we've talked a lot about that. I don't want anybody that I do business with as partners to not do well as I am. I want them to do better. And I think when you think that way, it's not a competition. Like, I told our property manager, I was like, I want you to have to hire more employees because of us.
Exactly.
I want to be selfish. I want to be your only customer at some point. I want to be so big that you can't handle it and that you outgrow it, and we have to figure out a way to make this work. Same thing. And I think if you ever have a hinge of jealousy, you got to figure out, maybe pray about it. Maybe you take a step back, talk about it. But like, when my partners on stuff, y'all, Steven, my banker, I consider him a big partner in what we do. I want them to be successful. And when they do something, I don't have a hinge of jealousy. Now, there may be some other people, I'm like, man, must be nice, jokingly. But like, man, I love it when they succeed. Because don't you want to do life with winners? I mean, seriously, like, people who do
that's
well.
That's the deal. Bubba, we talk about this. So Bubba, in his next life, I think he's just going to be like the Wolf of Wall Street. He's going to get Facebook rich. He's going to find equipment on Facebook. He's going to clean it up, and he's going to resell it, because this man likes to wheel and deal. But when it comes to our partners, the people we do business with every single day, what we don't do is we don't ask them for discounts. We don't ask them for the homie hookup. We want them to win. We have a company, hopefully we're going to get the owner on here very soon, because he could teach us all so much. But we have a company we buy a vast majority of our irrigation supplies from. Could we get them cheaper? Probably. But they do such a good job for us. It's not who we are. We we need everybody to win. And I want Jeff, he's built him a big old house, beautiful, and we landscaped it, right? And it's like, man, I feel good when my partners are winning. You're right. We want to be the biggest landscape design build company in West Texas. Some of it is we're competitive, but a whole bunch of it is when we are 3 times bigger revenue-wise than we are today, we have 3 times more impact.
Oh,
and
100%.
that's really what we're working for. Because if it's only about money, we can go get jobs.
Yeah, for sure. You know, what I tell him, and a lot of people that, call like, hey, if I start offering this, will you give us, a shot? I'm a loyal dog. Like, when people take care of me, I take care of them and, and want to return that favor. Sure, I'll look at it, and see if it works where we, can start helping them out or start buying from them as well. But that relationship that I have, he helped me when I first started pools. I didn't have an excavator. Thank God I'm out of that now. But whenever we did that,
hey, make sure you take that off our insurance. We are no longer building swimming pools.
Yeah, we need to drop our
I don't
insurance.
think anybody can make money building swimming pools, but that's a whole different story.
Yeah.
Live and learn.
Yep.
But he would loan me his excavator. Like, I'll be like, hey, let me rent your excavator. Hey, man, just come get it. And I'm okay from an insurance standpoint, probably not the best. I know that.
Yeah, we're gonna have to cut
No,
that
but
part
We're
out.
talking about relationships here, so
No, that's a big deal, though.
He did. He like, hey, yeah, come use it, And he's like, just drop me some cash, later or whatever, So that's what I would do. But just I was trying to figure it out, and he knew that. He could see that, and he worked on me like 2 years. He would always try to take me out to lunch. Hey, let's meet for lunch. Let's go do this, and I'd blow him off, or I'm too busy, I'm this and that, and then finally when I was like, all right, you know what, I'm gonna give he has been working on me, so I'm gonna give this dude a shot. It's just it surpassed everything. It was the relationship, and I knew that's what he was trying to build. He didn't. I mean, of course, he wanted my business, but it was more like the relationship. He's like, when somebody asks about sprinklers around here, like all I hear is Bubba. So I want to be a part of that. I'm like, okay, yeah. So that's what we did. So it's really, really, really about relationships.
It's made our business so much better having that mindset. We run crews and there's all these guys and it always changes, right? In our industry, we're fortunate we have stopped the churn and the burn, but there's the high turnover in the green industry. It's just what it is. People don't want to work in the elements. But it's really cool to have these staples in our partnership and our network because it's like I don't have to chase Richard down. If the guys are, I mean, it's almost to the point where they know you. They have a fender bender on a job site. A lady backs into them. They bump somebody. They have a process where they report it to us, but most of the time they're like, you want me to text Rich and see what we have to do? It's like, yeah, do that. And I'm going to keep focusing on my high-level activities. Or you're going to call Jeff at Alltex. Just call Alltex. They'll figure it out. Like, that is so valuable.
Oh, we hear it. It's cliche. Your network is your net worth, right? But like being that person for people, there's so many things that all three of us do that we don't get paid for, right? Sure. Like, but we do. Whether in some way or fashion later, we get paid for. And I think that's the biggest thing of that is, like, I had a guy text me this morning going, do you have a watch guy? And it's somebody y'all know, but I was like, yeah, of course I got a watch guy. What do you need? He goes, I want to treat myself for my 40th birthday with a gold, date just, solid gold Rolex. And I said, good, I'll text him. And I was like, what kind of era do you want? Like, new one, older one? He's like, I want a 70s or 80s model. They hadn't changed, 50-year-old watch, still working the same. That's why they're a Rolex, right? So I texted my buddy who does my watches, and I was like, you don't happen to have a 1984 day date, do you? And he texted me back, holy bleep, sent me the warranty card, sent me this watch, 5/27/84 was when it was manufactured. Sent it to my buddy, and he's like, I want it. You know what I mean? I'm not going to make anything on that deal, right? Like I'm a salesperson, so we kind of think about commissions sometimes. But you know what?
Hey, let me get a little.
But you know what?
Break me off a little something here.
My watch guy's going to take care of me.
For sure.
You know what I mean? He's always going to send people my way if they're in Texas for stuff. He's going to, you know what I mean? There's just things that are going to, what's funny is he's in St. George, Utah. Of all the places in the world, we have connections to St. George.
So my homie, Trevor Cali, speaking of Utah, we're in the, we're part of his mastermind, the Real Business Owners Mastermind. Rich, we've all known Trev a long time. That was something he told us early on. We were having some employee issues. In our world, it was you typically didn't talk to guys out in the field unless they were doing something wrong. Yeah. It's just the way the construction industry was. Doesn't make it right, but it is how we were brought into the industry, and we knew there had to be a change because we were losing, I call it friendly fire. We were losing really good people because we were not the owners we needed to be. And we had this talk with Trev, and he's like, "You're not making enough deposits." I'm like, "What you talking about, bruh? Like, I don't know what y'all do in Utah, but I'm not sure what you're talking about." And he's like, "You're not making enough deposits. You need to tell them, great job 50 times so that when that one time comes that you need to pull them to the side, put your arm around them and say, that's not up to our standards. We have to fix something." They know the deposit outweighed the withdrawal. Like, there's still excess in there. They know you have this much love for them, and you had to get their butt one time. So that's all we're doing here, right? We're just making deposits.
So
we're just making deposits.
The biggest mind shift in my business the past, say, 5 years has been going from a cog in the wheel, in this thing that I had to be a part of. I wasn't CEO, I wasn't president, I was like the best one there. You know what I mean? I'm the salesperson. I'll just do it myself. I'm tired of dealing with y'all. And
we were the best at every part of it.
Right. And there's turnover in every industry. So I don't want people out there, if you're not in the green space and you're listening to this, like, we have turnover. Like, everybody, it's just ubiquitous. And I don't know if it's a generational thing. We're getting old and we're like, all these kids, they don't want to stay anywhere. Two of our best employees, one started with Caitlin when she was 20, and I have one that turned 20 this week. And I mean, they're both great employees. It's the right person, though, right? Like, not many 20-year-olds can do what we do, like in our office, because we deal with people when they're not happy all the time, right? Like, you don't see them when they're happy. That, or you're doing sales. You know what I mean? It's one or the other. Like, it's something's not right, or they're filing a claim. So they're, already had a situation happen. It takes a certain person who can deal with that, or who can make 9 calls or 10 calls and get a hold of one person that hangs up on you and do that all day. But it happens in every business. But I agree with you. And it's not that you can buy loyalty, but take care of your people.
Sure.
You don't build your business. Your people build your business. So I've had to take this mindset of, and we talked a little bit about it before we started the podcast, like working in the business versus on the business. Working on the business is much more rewarding, right? And so I've had to look at it like I'm a coach. Like, I coach my kids. I coach a lot of kids. I run our youth basketball league in Sweetwater. Obviously, we play a ton of softball. I'm a coach 90% of my life. Why am I not doing it in my business as much? You know what I mean? I'm coaching customers all the time. That's what it is. I'm giving them, these are your options. These are what you should do. This is why I would do it. The with them, the what's in it for me. You mentioned that for you, but we also, when we're developing employees, we have to ask that question, what's in it for me? But from their perspective. We called it with them when I learned it in leadership in a course I took. You have to be able to answer that question for them. Like, I'm asking you to do X, Y, and Z, because their first thought's, well, what's in it for me? And so, to me, I've really started focusing on, instead of doing things myself, which is a trauma response. I'm not saying all 3 of us had trauma, but I would bet we could go back at a point in our life and say, I have extreme independence because of X, Y, and Z, Absolutely. Which will take you very far in business. But sometimes it's hard to get out of that pickup truck and let other people do things for you because of that trauma. You have to get over the trauma, whether it's counseling.
You have to get over the trauma to be able to trust, and that's Correct. What this is all about.
And so you'll see a lot of people that plateau because they can never get over their trauma. Now, I'm not saying people who didn't have trauma as kids can't be successful, but it's harder. I will be the first one to say that sometimes maybe we're setting up our kids for a little bit of failure because we're making it easier on them. They didn't have to struggle the same way that we did at certain things, or didn't have to deal with things, didn't have to grow up too quick. Yep. But that'll be determined.
Time will tell.
Yes, but I've got to coach people. And so I have to take, and you can't do that when you're working in it. You've got to step back and say, I'm going to spend 60% of my time coaching people. And maybe that's not even, like, I'm not even doing sales coaching. I'm talking about personal finances. I'm talking about personal relationships. I'm the therapist, the counselor, the coach. You can talk to me about those things. And then you are building trust, and you're building a relationship that's genuine. And those people stay with you. And employee turnover is going to be one of your greatest expenses because it's a true expense to me. And because if you spend all your training new people, you lost a lot of money.
Sure.
And retaining is so much. It's always that it's cheaper to keep her. Like creating new business is much more expensive than retaining what you have and repeat business, like for y'all. And so it's all about relationships, but you want to teach them how to have those relationships with people too. And it sounds stupid because like people should know how to have relationships with people. Guess what? They don't. Because a lot of times the people that we're dealing with are just as broken as we are. They're just not as good at hiding it. And you sometimes have to teach them, like, I get that you're frustrated with your wife or with your husband, but what I have found, listen to him, but like, y'all got to talk about it. Does he know you're frustrated? No? Well, then tell him. Like, those are small conversations, but like when you're talking to employees about their personal problems, I'm not saying you do it all the time, but like you build relationships there and you know what's going on. It's not one of those things, because I used to think, man, this employee just quit out of the blue. No, it's because I didn't know him. They didn't quit out of the blue.
That's exactly
the signs were there the whole time. Everybody else saw it.
Bubba and I talk about this daily. The gurus will tell you that business has to be business, personal has to be personal. And I would disagree with every ounce of being that I am, that business is absolutely personal.
How do you separate it?
You can't. Not if you can't separate business. You have to do life with the people that are part of your business. The most successful people in any industry, they will tell you that.
You're not truly a leader. You're a manager if you're not interjecting.
Especially small business. I mean, I guess if you get over 100 employees, 200, 300 employees, maybe it changes, but you still have a core around you that you're personal with. You can only manage so many people, right? It's 4 or 5 or whatever they say that number is, like effectively. Past that, you can't do it.
Full disclosure, I have been there. We have gone to scale. We have had 400 sales reps, East Coast to West Coast. I absolutely hate that because that is a different style of business, which is why we have decided we're going to be small giants.
That's Walmart. I mean, and you always hear about employees been there 30 years and they hate it.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so I think that it's just, yeah, you have to be invested in them. And I've talked about that. Like I'll never forget, I had a financial planner I knew. Like when you introduce yourself, like what do men usually do? Like when you first meet somebody, you're like, hey, what do you do? Like small talk.
Sure.
This guy would never say he was a financial planner. He always led off with, he goes, well, I'm a disciple of Christ. I'm a husband. I'm a father. Those were the most important things to him, not what he did. Even though guys will sit around, and that's generally just the small talk. The wives are doing something, you meet these new guys. What do you do? That's what he led with.
Man, you're sizing them up.
100%. You are 100% are sizing them up.
That's what we do.
That's primal. I mean, that's just like subconscious to say, I got to make sure I can fight my way out of this room if something happens,
Absolutely.
But he led with something different. And I think but how do you separate that? I mean, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I have faith. And that's where I have people they're always like, well, I just don't want to do business in the temple. I don't know, you're a Christian all the time, or you're, whatever it is. Like you have your faith all the time. Like, how do you separate that?
We don't separate it.
We don't either. I think it's important to talk about
that anymore. All right, guys, we're getting a little bit long. Rich, give us a 30-second nugget for those guys in the truck. It could be insurance, it could be life, it could be business, whatever you want. Yeah. And then let's make sure our listeners know how to get a hold of you to talk a little bit of business. They need some help in the insurance row.
So what I would say is do what you do and learn how to do it better than anybody else. I don't care what it is. And what you're not good at, hire somebody who made it their life to be the best at. So if you're the best landscape gardener out there, be the best one you can be, then hire people around you to help you to make you whole in the areas that you're not good in. Whether it's, your CPAs, your attorneys, whoever they are. Make them. Bookkeeping is a big deal for 2 guys in a truck. Make sure that you have somebody that has your back in those areas. That's the, bar none biggest thing. I'm going to actually give you a different contact. So I'm going to say it's, go to, Linktree /Live It Full. It has me and Caitlin's all our contact info on there for some of our other businesses. And it's got my Calendly on there. It's a great way to get a hold of us. It's got Instagram and all that kind of stuff.
They can follow you online. You do have a Facebook group for Live It Full, which is your lifestyle brand.
We've got a podcast, and so don't want to take anything away from y'all's, but yeah, I mean, that's where all of it's found. You can, at Live It Full on Facebook and those kind of things. Pretty easy to find.
All right, man. Well, thanks for being with us today. Everybody out there listening, we appreciate you. We look forward to bringing you some more golden nuggets here very soon. Thanks for listening.